the January 26, 2021 meeting of the Independent Community Police Oversight Commission will come to order. Ms. Dines, can you do the roll call?
I certainly shall.
When
Chair
you're
Jackson.
present.
Okay. Commissioner Walton.
Present.
Commissioner Altman.
Present.
Vice Chair Todoro.
Present.
Commissioner Mary. I see you. Commissioner Phillips.
Present.
Commissioner Carter.
Here.
Okay, and let's see, Commissioner Birch.
Present.
And our new Commissioner Ship.
Present.
Okay, and we have Councilmember Song and Councilmember Wamlawi is present as well. Okay. We have a quorum.
Perfect. And is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None, hearing none. So I want to introduce our new commissioner, Micaiah Shipp, who is our youth member. She's a public policy major at the University of Michigan. She's already had a paid position as a field organizer for Rashida Tlaib. She happened to meet Representative Tlaib during a policy fellowship that she was able to gain while she was still in high school. Micaiah worked alongside other paid workers who were all adults, mind you. She directed social media initiatives. She engaged never voters and first-time voters and created some youth voting campaign videos. She's also gone to Lansing to lobby state representatives, and she was recently featured on an NBC segment on first-time voters, and it's called BIPOC Gen Zers are voting for the first time and hoping to decide the fate of their swing states. The video is about 5 minutes long, so if we get done a little bit early, I'll show it to you guys. It's quite impressive, and if not, I'll put the link in the chat.
Okay.
She's done a plethora of speaking engagements. She's quite compelling, as I'm sure you'll come to know, and we are some of us have had a chance to interview her and speak with her multiple times, and we are very excited to have her on this commission because we certainly need the perspective of young people, and we're actually expecting to put her to lots and lots of work. So we're happy to have her for that as well. So welcome, Micaiah. We're very grateful that you decided to join our commission, and we hope that it's as rewarding for you as it will be for us, because we're going to ask you to do lots of stuff. So thank you so much for joining. Is there anything you'd like to say?
Sure. I'm super excited to be here. I definitely plan to follow through with the work that I'm put towards. I'm definitely going to be consistent. I have a lot to offer, I feel like, different perspective, and I've definitely been introduced better than I can even introduce myself. So thank you for that. And like I said, I'm just excited to be here.
Well, thank you very much. So now is the time in the process where we can have public comment. Denise, do you see anybody out there?
No, at the present time, there's no one.
Okay. So what we'll do is we'll move on, and then if we have time at the end, which I suspect we will, we can have some time for public comment at the end.
Okay.
If there are any callers. You guys had a copy of the November meeting minutes. We did not have a December meeting.
Sorry, can I just check something? Is it public comment or public forum?
It's public forum. I misspoke, and for that I apologize.
Just because I know it gives us different rules, I wanted to make sure.
It's very different rules. It is a public forum, and we will engage in that at the end of our meeting if anyone calls in. Thank you for that. It's important for us to say it. Everyone has a copy of the November meeting minutes. Is there any discussion, any corrections of those, or is there a motion to approve them as they are?
So moved.
Second.
Is it a second? Thank you. All in favor of approving the November meeting minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All righty. Thank you. They are approved. We have some old business. So I wanted to talk about our training. So we need to start making sure that we let Denise know all of the training that we've done. So we need to make a report of what we did in 2020. So if you could forward her any 2020 trainings you've done that you haven't yet, if you could do that this week, that would be very helpful. And you could do that intermittently as you complete a training in 2021. You could send her a note and say, hey, this is what I did. This is with whom I did it. Here's the date. And I wanted to talk a little bit about what training entails, because training could be formal classes at NACOL. Training could also be reading. So we all have a reading list. And I know I've given some of you guys books. I've dropped some of them off at your homes, but we have a bunch more I have a box because we got multiple copies. We have lots of different titles, but we have multiple copies. And so if anybody needs to borrow those to read those, that certainly counts as training. There are journal articles, and I'll try to link you guys. I can send you guys a list. And if you are interested in it, I'll just send you the PDF. I don't want to try to send the PDF of 60 articles out, but that certainly counts as training. Sarah and I went to a training on Friday, I think, I think it was Friday, but we definitely went, given by the American Bar Association and Georgetown University, and it was about active bystander intervention for police. And if you've taken an intro to psych class, you know the term bystander intervention. It refers to the concept of when you're in a group, it's very hard to intervene in something that's going on. And so we have lots of incidences where everyone's standing around and nobody's doing anything. And it's not because people are uncaring. It's not because they're terrible people. It's because overcoming being able to take a step to intervene is actually quite challenging. And so in the training, they talked about an incident that was quite salient. There was a senior officer, and he was arresting an individual, and he did several things wrong while he was arresting the individual. And there were lots of junior officers watching him do this. And none of them said anything to him because he was a senior officer. And they put the suspect in the back of the police car, and they proceeded to take him to jail. However, because he was handcuffed incorrectly, he was able to bring his hands to the front of his body. And because he had not been searched correctly, he retrieved the gun from his waistband that had not been discovered by the senior police officer. And he moved the partition and shot and killed one of the police officers who was taking him to jail. That's a huge problem because all of the people who were watching the senior officer saw that the person had not been searched correctly. And at any point, any of them could have said something, but they didn't. Not because they're horrible people, but because there's a culture, not just in policing, but in medicine, in teaching, in whatever in the United States, that makes it more challenging to intervene. And so this program has been put together. It was used in New Orleans when they were under a consent decree, so they're kind of motivated to do it. And they called it EPIC, which is Ethical Policing is Courageous. And what they did was frame it as, if you step in when you see an officer or your fellow officer doing something inappropriate, you are helping the officer. It is not that you are being disloyal. You're actually being more loyal because you are potentially saving them from getting fired. You're saving them from getting killed. So they have this very salient example. It's also currently being used in Baltimore, and is also being used in some other mid-sized cities that are not under a consent decree to some great effect. And so we went to a talk and we heard a lot about the program. And I was very interested in it because it's one way to promote culture change within a department, from kind of going to the us versus them mentality, and sort of loyalty is not snitching, thinking about loyalty within the police department as being protective of each other. So I ran the program past a bunch of police friends of mine who thought it was useful. I got a chance to share it with Chief Cox. I'm sure he hasn't had a chance to look at it yet because there's a volume of information out there on it. But I was able to have a talk with Jerry Clayton about it. And I said, you don't have to read all of this. I know you're super busy. Just let me know what you think. And he called me and we had like a 2-hour conversation about it because he was so excited about it. He's already signed up the sheriff's department and he himself is actually going to be trained. So we'll get to see what it looks like locally and see how it does, at least in the sheriff's department. So all of that to say, even going to something like that is certainly training, right? We learned about options for police. This is not necessarily oversight, right? This is not something that we would participate in. It's something strictly for police. But one of the jobs that we have in terms of oversight is thinking about policy and thinking about how to prevent some of the incidents that we see. So of course, complaint review is a huge part of what we do. But I think that thinking about policy and thinking about prevention is probably equally important to complaint review. And so in that vein, we learned about some strategies that are being used around the country to be useful. And then we also did a training last Thursday with Corey Mills of the police department on kind of showing us what their implicit bias training looks like. And so if you do any of those things, if you go to a training on your own, if you attend a session somewhere else, all of those things count as training. And if you ever have to pay a fee, a $10 fee or $20 fee to attend a training or something, that's certainly something that's covered within our training budget. And so Denise could pay for it or you could get reimbursed for it. Probably it's certainly easier if she just pays for it. But so I just want to make sure everybody understands kind of the things that can be involved in training. I think everybody needs to do a certain amount of NACOL training, but there are so many other things out there. And I'll try to do, when I hear of things, even if I'm not going, I'll try to put them out in email in case anybody else wants to sign up. I found out about the ABLE or EPIC program at the last minute. I think I signed up 20 minutes before it started. But if anybody has any opportunities like that, we should definitely share them among the whole email list. And I will give everybody Makaya's email. She's got an ICPOC email address now so that she can be included in those. Do you guys have any questions about training or thoughts?
No, I have a, I wonder how many had attended the presentations by CARE Michigan, ran about 12 weeks, looking at the history of racism and resistance in America. And if anyone did not see that, I believe that the recording is on YouTube. I probably at one point, I might just send a link to Denise for anyone who wants to go and look at some of the topics that they had covered. It's just amazing. In lieu of what is happening, what had happened, and what would happen, is to have an idea about what's really going on. It covers many topics from different areas, and I would encourage anyone who has a little bit of time just to look at some of those.
I remember you making us aware of that in the fall, and I'm looking at YouTube now and I see quite a few links to some of the talks that they did. So it looks like they put quite a bit of that online.
Correct. And just choose any of the topics that you feel you are interested in. You don't have to go through every one of them, but you know, it covers really the history from way back, from the 1600s and up. So
Denise, is there a way to do the chat in here? Because there's one of them, the history of racism and resistance in America. I copied the link address, but I don't see, I guess maybe if I
don't see. Let me see if I can open up more. No. Hold on. Councilman Ramwali has his hand up.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Councilman, while we're trying to figure this link thing out.
Good evening and thank you. And I just wanted to ask Denise if it was possible with the agendas, if we can change the public comment to public forum so it can reflect and we get better used to using that term.
Sure.
Future agendas. And I just wanted to welcome Makaya to the commission. It was really hard to get you approved. Just kidding.
It was unanimous.
In one vote. at the council table. So we're excited to have you here so quickly after that approval last week, and looking forward to what you can add to this dynamic group. So welcome, and thank you from the city for serving on this commission.
Thank you.
Council Member Song, and then
Yes.
Commissioner Carter.
Everyone. Tomorrow, it sounds like tomorrow's going to be like a marathon of interesting policing workshops. So tomorrow there's the 1 o'clock for stats oversight webinar. I think Denise had sent that out to everyone. So I'll be on
Yeah.
that. It's at 1 o'clock. And then the School of Public Health is hosting policing as a public health issue webinar from 4 to 5. That's easily Googleable. That's free. It looks really, really promising. So please don't let me be the only ICPOC person at these things. And if I am, I will be happy to share and report back out too. Thanks.
Thank you. I never know sometimes until I see somebody else ask a question. I'm like, hey,
Yeah.
they're from Ann Arbor. That's one of us.
Okay, excuse me, Lisa, are you able to share now?
I have a Q&A, but it's only hosts and panelists can see the questions. So I have that ability. I don't have just the standard chat button that we usually have.
Right, I don't either.
Okay, well, don't worry about it. I have the history of racism and resistance in America like on my screen, and I can send a link to everyone afterwards.
Okay. Commissioner Mary has her hand up.
Anan, you're muted.
Lynn,
Okay.
you mentioned some place just now, the second place at 4 to 5. They have some. Can you repeat that, please?
Sure. It's the U of M School of Public Health is hosting a webinar called Policing as a Public Health Issue.
I can send you the email with the details, Anan, because I sent that one.
Yeah, that would be good. Thank you.
I shared this with at our last council meeting too, so hopefully we can see other council members join us. So thank you for sharing that.
Commissioner Carter has her hand up.
Yeah, I was going to say that I think it was Sarah that sent out something from the Police Chiefs Association.
Yes.
That had a lot of very good information, and there was about an 8-minute video that was also really good on there. But I'm going to have to get with Denise because I think things are being. I apologize. I have a couple of different email accounts, and I have not. I guess these announcements are being sent out on the ICPOC email.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So I'm going to have to figure out what I'm doing wrong because I'm not getting that email.
And you can tell me the preferred email. You and I seem to be able to email okay, correct?
You can email, and I got what Sarah had sent out, but all these other things I'm not getting.
Oh, okay.
It would be easier for me. Is there some kind of a policy about not using another professional email?
No, there's no policy. I think in the beginning, we all wanted to have separate email addresses because they were made public and you might not want your professional or personal one out there. But whatever email address you want to use is the one that we will use. And so if you can just tell us which one to use and we will follow your direction. However, City Attorney Slay is weighing in on that.
Yes,
so hold
her
that
hand
thought.
is up.
Okay.
Okay. So this is for the benefit of FOIA. And I know this commission, more so than others, can probably appreciate that transparency is required for the police, but it's got to be transparency required for all of our boards and commissions as well. In the event that we get a FOIA that says, I want all police or any ICPOC related business from Dr. Jackson to Stephanie Carter, we'll have to go through your personal email account to pull that out.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not the most comfortable or the best practice. And so I would encourage all of you to use your ICPOC emails. And if anyone needs help doing that, I'm sure Miss Denise is at the ready to get us
Yes.
started. And that encourages, that supports the transparency that we're asking of our city partners as well. In addition to that, Francis and Lisa, we've all been working really hard to try to come up with some procedures for you. And we have discovered, with the help of our fantastic IT department at the city, that the best way to transmit documents for when you are doing complaint review is to be able to log on using your city account. Especially during the times of COVID, when we're not going to be able to really get in a room and show a video or something on the big screen, but logging on to the A2 Central, our city-centered webpage, is going to allow you to review the confidential documents that you'll need to do if you are signed up for complaint review. So I would encourage all of you to use that. If you do have right now an arsenal of ICPOC-related emails in your email, I would recommend that you forward those to yourself at ICPOC. That way, if there is a FOIA, we can be 100% compliant with it.
And the ability, what we want ultimately is to maintain the ability to review. Attorney Slay was referring to complaint review things, but that could include body cam footage or reports that that we need to review and assess in the process of a review. And there was a time when we would all troop down to the police station and sit around in a closed room and do that. COVID obviously put a stop to that. But I think one of the things that we talked about was that if anybody's involved in doing complaint review, it's going to be more efficient if we can continue to do it remotely going forward. The system, and so we all have A2Gov email addresses, and they can be reinstated. They were sort of put on pause for some time, but they can be reinvigorated and renewed, and thus we can sign onto a server with those, and we can do it asynchronously, which means if somebody has to do it at 3 a.m., they can do that. If somebody has to do it at 2 a.m., they can do that, such that we can all be ready and prepared for a meeting, having seen all the confidential work, the products that we need to see. And so Denise is in the process of restoring those email addresses for everyone, and so that we'll be able to use these servers, even though we're not working from a city computer. And that'll provide some security and allow us to do it probably more efficiently, even after COVID. It just was too challenging to troop down to the police station and get everybody in one place at one time. And, we had those discussions about trying to do that between 9 and 5, and that was not really appropriate for a volunteer commission. So this is going to work a lot better for everyone. And so everybody's A2Gov emails will be restored. And if you haven't been using them, we can start using them, and we can figure out how to streamline the password process. Because that was not easy, but we can do that, and everybody will be on the same page. So any other thoughts about training, any imminent trainings anybody wants to share right now before we move on? All right. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Councilmember Rumlawi.
Thank you, Chair. While we're on the issue of emails and communication, that Stephanie had brought up, thank you. I'm just wondering, at what level are communications sent to council members? There is a lot of communication that occurs between commissioners, much that probably will stay at that level, but is there a threshold at when communications are shared with council members? Because sometimes I don't hear things until some sort of action is needed by council, and I'd rather be more abreast of what's actually happening amongst commissioners. So I know it's a little awkward. We could take it offline somehow, but wanted to address it at this point. If I, just put that out there.
Can you tell what kinds of stuff you haven't been included in that you'd prefer to be included in? Like, do you want training emails?
Yeah, I guess that's a conversation we can probably have, at a later point. But I don't really receive any emails, on matters unless there's a particular issue that needs to be escalated, but just on more of,
Not to say you don't get a million texts from us.
yeah, well, not a million. It's not too bad. It's definitely, we had some time off there, and it's good to be back. But I guess, is there anything that the commission would want us to be aware of? It's more of that. I just don't want to be stepping on any toes and being presumptuous. But I also don't want to be left in the dark, and I'm not sure where that line is.
I think on the big picture things, we try to include you guys. Like the next item on the agenda is talking about, well, actually a few items down, we're going to be talking about the budget, and that's something for which we will need you guys' expertise as we're getting it ready. And obviously we have a meeting set up to kind of talk about that, even before we get started with it. So certainly those kinds of things, if you want to know about training stuff, we can include you in that.
I think it would be helpful. And I mean, I don't need to know who's going tomorrow to do something per se, but I just feel a little, probably not as well in tuned with the ongoing and I just, and then I don't need to know it, I want to be respectful. And I guess we can take it again as a conversation with leadership and council as to what, and Denise, of course, as to what level, when the commission, what type of communications will come to council, just as an ordinary, But I think right now what I'm asking for is more. To what degree, I don't know.
Okay. Well, I guess we can talk about that tomorrow, yeah? All right. Anything else on training? So Francis is going to talk a little bit about the standardization of the complaint review process. And if you could, Francis, maybe back it up a little bit and talk about why we even have to go through this.
So, when we first started, we were going round and round about trying to put together a process of how round robin grouping of commissioners were going to review reports. And we had a flow chart and everything, but we never actually reviewed any complaints. And so then we went through some different changes with the police department administration personnel, and last, I guess it's actually over a year now, but in the fall of 2019, we started working on another process that seemed to streamline things better. And the police department were providing us a spreadsheet, which was their summary sheet of the complaints as they came in. And that was working pretty well until we went into quarantine with COVID, and some other things came up. And we got kind of stopped for a while there. And then when we did start up again, the spreadsheet was missing information. It didn't quite look the same. There were some questions there. And then some other folks at the city, Tom Crawford, started meeting with us more regularly, and some additional questions then came up. We've had Assistant City Attorney Slay working with us more closely over the last 4 months or so to come up with a process that doesn't change. And what I mean by that is what I was just discussing, and how we started with a flow chart, and then that hit a road bump, and then we hit more road bumps. And during this whole time, there's never been a process that everybody followed. Personnel would change and somebody would interpret something differently, and we hit a roadblock again. And so right now what we're trying to do is come up with a process that is agreed upon by the city, the police, the city attorney's office, and ICPOC, that is going to be in place so that when the day comes that many of us are no longer here anymore, it's still the same process. We need that uniformity to make sure that every complaint is going to be reviewed in the same manner. So this isn't just about us reviewing complaints. It's also about the parties involved in the complaints. And everybody should get a fair shake, and everything should be reviewed in the same manner. And so it really is something that needs to get done for the betterment of our process and for our success. So where we are now with that is we've met with Assistant City Attorney Slay and the deputy chiefs, and we are very close to coming up with something that is more formalized. It also dictates timelines. So we are coming up with, for instance, this spreadsheet will be given to Denise and therefore us the same date every month. We are coming up, and it's going to be on the blank date of the month. Denise should receive an up-to-date spreadsheet. And that spreadsheet is also going to be set up in a way that can be shared with all the commissioners, so that regardless of the information managers who are actually reviewing the complaints and seeing the file in its entirety, this is something that'll be set up in a manner that all commissioners can review the information that's in there.
Let me jump in for 1 sec, Francis. One of the things the city wants to start doing is making sure that there are only 3 people at this time who can see all of the confidential information on any particular case. I think that that causes some problems for us, particularly as we are, there are some of us who have more experience reviewing cases than others, and it might be better for us to review them 4 or 5 at a time until everybody gets kind of used to the process. But for now, we're restricted to only having 3 people, and those 3 people who get all of the information on any particular one case are called information managers. And so although there'll be many people reviewing complaints, 3 people will work on one case, 3 people on another case. And so that's what Frances is talking about when she's talking about information managers.
Yeah, thank you for catching that, because I did forget to refer back to that is something that the city is asking that we go back to. That was originally discussed when we first started, but we thought that we would be able to move away from that, but they are asking that we do follow that, which is in the ordinance. So you can find more information about that in there. So we want to make sure that if you're not an information manager, the commission as a whole is still being updated on all of the complaints, so that you'll see the complaints, how many we have, what they are about. You know, is it something that came out of a traffic stop? Is it something that came from an accident? Is it, you know, how was, is the complaint about that the officer is rude, or is the complaint about that the officer mishandled private property? Those are the kinds of things that we would be looking to try to make sure the commission as a whole is aware of those things and what we're looking at.
So that we can look at patterns in practice.
Yeah.
And that's really important for us to look at. That's why everybody needs to be able to know what all the complaints are about, even if you're not reviewing the details of each case.
And one of the things that the commission will get as a whole also on there is you're not going to see the officers' names, but you are going to see a number. So the professional standards has given each officer a random number. So it's not affiliated necessarily with their badge number or anything in their file, but each officer does have one.
But information managers
see the names, right? The
see
information managers are able to see the investigation in its totality minus lien information, because that's one thing we still don't have. We still don't have that ability to see lien information.
And I think as much as that seemed to be a huge hurdle in the beginning, it turns out not to be so much a hurdle for us now, because most of the people who file complaints are regular. They are people who don't have any criminal involvement at all. They're not, I think the perception was that it was going to be mostly people being taken to jail who had complaints against the police, but that's not what we've seen at all. We've seen citizens who have complaints against the police, and so there isn't lien information associated with them. So it turns out that that's not such a huge barrier for us.
We did have one body cam that did need redaction because, you know, there was a driver's license was held up in front of the camera. So that has to be redacted. But then we also had another case where it needed no redaction at all. So.
Anan?
You know, I was wondering, like in the last year, we've been meeting, virtually pretty much. And I don't have any idea in this year how many complaints the police have, what kind of complaints we have. It's been a full year, and is that information available? Like if I say, what was the situation in 2020? How many complaints the police had? What kind of complaints? I still don't know.
I didn't know either, though.
Yeah, that's.
It doesn't
I'm sorry to admit that. We just got that full 2020 information.
But does it make sense? Like maybe we can have a monthly report as a commissioner, like in the month of January, the police have 3 complaints and this is their nature. We don't have to get more than that, or like there were all these, Black Lives Matter demonstration in Ann Arbor, and hopefully no conflict with the police had happened. But I don't know. If somebody asked me, my answer would say, I don't know. And it doesn't make sense. Like you're on a police oversight commission and you have no idea how many complaints for a whole year, how many complaints, what the nature, what happened during. I mean, there's something missing, what we're doing.
Yeah, so that's exactly what we're looking at. And what that was is, how things were presented to us. And then in some cases that spreadsheet wasn't necessarily, there might've been stuff on there that we as commissioners couldn't share with the public. So that's where now we're coming up with this process to make sure that the police are providing us that spreadsheet in a way that we can put it out there and that we.
I mean, we're not the public, we're the commission. You know what I mean? You can't share it with the public, but we're not the public.
You know what, Anan, we had a very long gap where we got no information from professional standards. So I could not answer the question either. And I could not tell you how many complaints there were. I would say that there were 22 complaints in 2020, but that's wrong. And I know it's wrong, but the spreadsheet I had in front of me said 22 on it. I think it's actually closer to 38, but we did not get that information. And so we had a huge lag in information flow from professional standards to us. We have not reviewed body cam footage in months. We haven't reviewed cases in months. There has been a standstill on that, and part of the reason why Francis has been working so hard to make a standardized process that cannot be changed by individuals is precisely because of that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I agree that one of the things is if we weren't asking and saying we want the spreadsheet, we weren't necessarily getting it. And that's why it's so important that we have a process in place where they know, the police know that on, the X date of the month, this report has to go to Denise or has to go to
Did we not get, I remember that we got in the past when we were meeting face to face, we used to get complaints, and this is how many complaints and there are, and this is this is their nature. Not necessarily we reviewed them because that took a time for them to, but we would see the cases, but they say you cannot review them now because they have some information are confidential and we cannot show it to you, and they have to clean it up, and they have, but we saw complaints, but like in the last year, we didn't see anything.
I think we could just make a standard agenda item that we just say how many new complaints since the last month and how many there are total. We could just do that every month going forward. But from September to December, that number wouldn't change because we didn't get information.
It makes sense because that's basically our major thing. Our major job is to, look into the complaint of the police and the practice of the police. That's what we're there for. And if that's missing, it's a big chunk of our work is missing.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. We were doing that, you're right, in January and February, because I remember we were giving those updates at the meeting and we were going back and forth with the spreadsheet. And then it just kind of, didn't work that way when we were in quarantine and once things went through. So I think that now that we're really getting our dug into getting this process in place, we'll be able to go back to that.
Okay.
Commissioner Ahmed?
Yeah.
Are we the ones who are going to basically have the items that we are going to ask the police to provide, whether it's number of complaints, the type of complaint, et cetera, the progress of each complaint, so that can be standardized. So when the police are providing us with the information, that is the form or formula that they would be using every time they are addressing these incidents. Because I see over here is like chief of police is the one who can update us on the status. It's just in the ordinance over here.
Right.
Of these incidents. Because what if we have to contact the complainant about what is really happening with their complaints? You know, if we don't have the information, if we don't have the data, and if it's not standardized, we can't really analyze the data in a way to say that was a bias, no bias, this or that. So we need really to make sure that the information that we get is enough to make some kind of judgment, even as preliminary as it is, or as brief as it is.
Right. The information managers are going to have access to the entire file. So you're going to be able to sit down and actually see the original complaint and the officers' names and all of the investigation done by professional standards. And you're going to be able to review that. The information managers are. The full commission is not able to see everything. But the information managers will be able to put together their recommendation from their review and share that with the commission.
And I think if I understand what you're saying, Mohammed, one of the parts of standardization is making sure that all information is disseminated the first time. So for example, there was a case with 2 officers and we only saw body cam footage from 1 officer and we're wondering where the other one is. And they said, oh, we'll have to go back and get that. That should now be ready all the time the first time. And so when you review any case, you should have all of the information at hand every time without us having to say, well, yes, we would like to see the body cam from both officers. So if that's what you mean, that's part of the thing that Francis is also trying to standardize, so that when we ask for body cam footage, that means all of the relevant body cam footage. That when we ask for reports, that's reports from all related, and that we're not going to have to piecemeal, okay, in 30 days, then show us the next thing. Okay, in 30 days, show us the next thing. And so that's part of what we hope will be improved by this process.
Yeah, we don't want to continue to be in a position where we're getting information only if we ask for it.
Yeah.
Because then it's kind of the situation of you don't know what you don't know.
And I think we did have some assumptions early on that a bunch of information would be provided because that's how it was done in the past.
Right.
When we transitioned, it became obvious that that wasn't the case. And so now we're trying to write it out so that in 50 years from now, when we're all, sunbathing in Florida and other people are doing this job, then they will always get all the information all the time. Chief Cox, did you have a question?
Sorry, I did not have a question. I was just going to demystify a little bit of this stuff. We had a total of 29 complaints in the year 2020. So if that's helpful, I just wanted to provide that, not a mystery, not a whatever, 29. So I just wanted to clarify that with you.
Thank you. And you know what, we could do one better too, because sometimes we have complaints that we don't investigate ourselves. And so the numbers might be a little bit different. If it's like an internal police complaint and it comes to us, That's not one that we investigate. So that wouldn't show up in our numbers either.
Right, and those are those little things you'll see when we finish the process and we provide it to you. You'll see that too, that if a complaint comes to us that is more of an internal, Denise immediately forwards that to the police. You know, she'll make a note of it, that we received it and that it was forwarded to the police for investigation. But we do not have, we are not authorized or empowered by our ordinance to do internal complaints or to review internal complaints.
Councilmember Romlawi, did you have a question too?
Yeah, thank you. The information managers, I apologize, but are these static, the same three, or a few subsets of three, or is the whole commission rotating robin?
It's not the whole commission, but it is a subset. So there are maybe three, let's say Francis, Bonnie, and I are on one particular case, and then Mohammed and Anan and Francis are on another one, and then Jude and Makaya and I are on a third one.
Kind of how it was originally thought to be done, but kind of didn't take root yet.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
And different people have different interests in reviewing complaints.
Yeah,
so
yeah. Not everybody was comfortable with reviewing complaints because they didn't have the training and experience. So, the names. I'm sorry. Are the names going to be privy to the information managers or the police officers, or just the numbers assigned to them? They're going to see the names as well.
We will see the names.
Okay.
And also, we'll have a chart that we fill out now that we're sort of getting caught up. We're almost there, where we can say who the information managers are for each case. And the reason why that becomes important is because Denise needs to know, and the police need to know, because they need to know which body cam footage, which commissioner should see. So they need to give us access to those files, but they wouldn't want to give me access to a file that I'm not reviewing, for example. So they will only want to give access to those information managers. So we're going to have a chart that everybody has access to, and everybody can see who the information managers are on every single case.
Okay. Well, thanks for everybody who's been involved in trying to do this type of work. It's been a commitment. The attorney's office will send counsel, every month or every other month. It seems like every month, a list of all of the cases that the city is currently in litigation with, and it's confidential information that we receive. And I would just ask, maybe you all can lean on the attorney's office to model something like that for this commission. So once a month, you get an update. This one is sustained, this one was unfounded, these are the ones that are active, and you have a dashboard of what's going on with the cases and the investigations and where they are in that process. And the attorney's office again already does this for counsel with the matters that we deal with. So I just was going to throw that out there. Perhaps maybe someone will get picked up and maybe something will be done, or maybe it's already being done that way.
We actually are working with Tom Crawford to make a dashboard that we can make public on our website.
Okay.
And so we are negotiating with what information can be included on there to the public. Obviously, it'll be numbers of police, their unique identifier number that's been dreamt up by the system. But we're trying to make sure that it can be substantive, but we've had many requests, including MLive, that we put that information on our website. And so we're working on how to do that and make sure that it stays updated.
Cool. So you got something that's looking out, as well as something that's internal. It's got, obviously some confidentiality to it. And just lastly, this is like one of the things that I would, as a council member, would be interested in seeing as Denise reports out to the commission. On a regular basis, this would be an item that would definitely interest me.
So
I think it's good public information, just a good practice to be transparent about that.
Yeah, so we'll continue to keep you posted. Hopefully by next month's meeting, we'll have something more substantive that's prepared in draft for you to review.
If we're ready to move on, we could talk a little bit about the next item, which is potential budget cuts. Tom Crawford asked, he didn't ask us, but he meant to. He forgot us again, to ask every city department to come up with an impact statement to indicate what would happen if we had a 5% budget cut. What could we not do with a 5% budget cut? And so Jude is our budget guru, and she started working on that question. And there were a lot of ways that we thought about approaching the question itself. And I think our response is due fairly soon. So we will provide a response to the city fairly soon. Jude, do you want to jump in here?
Yeah, sure, yeah. It just and guru is just a laughably generous term. So yeah, we were asked about a 5% cut to the budget, and there was a very specific template that we were asked to kind of give back impact statements in, and try as we could. It's really trying to cram a square peg into a round hole with that format, because it really was designed more for sort of city departments. The ICPOC being the only commission with a budget, it was kind of difficult. So we've actually written up a statement instead, just kind of explaining the case for it. I certainly can cut and paste and cram it into that format, but it doesn't seem to make any sense to do that for the sake of it. So we're checking and seeing, will just our statement work in lieu of that? Kind of in lieu of that specific format. But we are trying to push back as much as possible on a 5% cut for our budget, just simply because, even though for a variety of reasons, one of them is our budget is $150,000, but only $50,000 of that is really in any way within our control, because the rest of it is shared city costs for things like IT and everything that all departments have to share their cost of, and then our personnel costs and things, and we really don't have any control over that. So really our actionable section of the budget is about $50,000. So if we were going to try and come up with the $7,500 cut within that budget to be 5% of the overall, we'd really be taking a hit of 15% to our budget, if that makes sense. Right? Math works out that way. So at the very least, I would propose that we should just be looked at to see if we could cut $2,500 of our discretionary budget, the budget that we actually do have control over. But that still is quite a big chunk to us. One of the things that I also want to point out within that is the amount of money that we're returning back to general funds. Not in any way to try and claim that, it's rollover funds, because the city doesn't do that, and we understand that, but just really is demonstrating we don't spend funds unless we have a reason to. This commission hasn't lightly spent funds. It hasn't. I'm waiting to get back the exact numbers for this year to date, and admittedly it's been a very strange year, but I still think we are yet to see a year with a quote unquote normal sort of budget time for ICPOC, which is why I am pushing back quite heavily on the idea of taking a 5% cut going into next year. That's sort of my stand on it right now.
And of course, I support that. I'm not sure. I know that every penny matters from every department. I'm not sure $2,500 from ICPOC is going to be that helpful to the city, but I understand it could do something. But we have been so responsible with our budget, and we have not spent a penny on, we've not spent an unnecessary penny, but we've also saved the city thousands of dollars. When we didn't have an administrator for several months, Francis and I became the administrators. We didn't have a temp, we didn't have a substitute, we didn't have anybody. So there were no expenses as far as that went. We didn't do, because of COVID, of course, we didn't do training in the normal way. Some of us did virtual training, but that was so scaled back. We did community outreach in a widely scaled back way. And so we just didn't have the expenditures. In this year's budget, we will return quite a bit to the general fund, but we also did that in the 2019 to 2020 budget. We returned tens of thousands of dollars back to the general fund that we didn't use. We were able to go to a conference, but we drove. And so we just paid registration fees. And so we've been very frugal. And I think we have always thought about spending money with an eye to spending the taxpayers' money and being responsible for that. And so I think what's going to happen is that now that we may be able to do more training, hopefully in 2021, our fingers are crossed, and this budget that we'll be talking about is for 2021, 2022. So keep that in mind. It's not for this budget cycle. Hopefully that will include vaccines for the entire world, and we'll all be able to do what we need to do vis-a-vis training, but also outreach. And so we expect that we probably will use all of our budget, and that we might spend more than we have spent in the past, and then the subsequent year kind of go back to the middle, because we will have, there's a bunch of things we need to make up for. Like a bunch of people who could have done training last year did not do training because of COVID. And so we are pretty sure that we're going to need every penny of our budget this year. And so I think our position is going to be that we need to hang on to our little $2,500 worth of money. Councilmember Rumlawi.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate the time Commissioner Walton has put into this. She's been helping us from the start with our budget and has done a great job. You know, explained it very well that, you know, the discretionary part of the budget would be affected greatly by this. And I just remember during the formation of the commission and when the task force first asked for a budget, they had asked for 1% of the overall budget or something to that effect that amounted to over $300,000. That obviously wasn't granted, and a much smaller budget was put in place as a placeholder. They really didn't know how to come up with that number because the commission hadn't convened or anything. So in some sense, it was an arbitrary number that they selected of $150,000 to put in as a placeholder. And since then, it's been, you know, hasn't been a consistent go of things. And we really don't know what it's going to cost for a commission to do really its work. And the commission has shown itself to be extremely good stewards of the taxpayer dollars and not do anything ridiculous with the money, and very careful with any type of spending. So these are very good points. Another point that was brought up is that the police contract, you know, gave the police a 2% raise at a time where, you know, we're asking for departments to take a cut and executive level to have a freeze. So I think a strong argument can be made if we can find the money to pay the police a 2% increase, then we should be able to not ask for a cut to this commission. So I will be advocating for no cuts to be made, and we'll see how that goes. But things are looking decent. You know, the federal government, state government aids, CARES Act money came into the city's coffers to offset a lot of other type of income that wasn't generated or didn't come in through parking revenue and such. But I think we need to stay vigilant and remain good stewards of the money. And hopefully there won't be any cuts and there won't be anything like that. What I, at least right now, what my fear for the city and other is that the subsequent years, we really haven't really felt the effects of what's going on now until probably fiscal year 23, fiscal year 24, is we're going to start really seeing the effects of what's going on right now with the city's budget. But is the surplus that's been left over for the last couple of years, do we have an exact figure on what those numbers were? I know the first year wasn't a full year maybe for the commission, and all that money's been given back. I don't know if anyone's got it at their fingertips.
You know what, I'm going to try to do an estimate, and I'm going to reverse engineer it and just look at what we spent that year. It wasn't a full year, but also when we asked that of the city, they came back and said that we were not considered a separate entity then. So they just didn't keep track of that number. And then, and so they didn't keep track of it until this year. And so we can see how much we've spent thus far in the fiscal year, which is pennies. But, and so we can guesstimate how much we're not going to use this year, how much will be returned. But we don't know for the previous years because we weren't considered separate, is what
this will be our only year that we actually have
Right.
reliable numbers.
Yeah, and it's not,
Yeah, and it's
I
such a
think we can
weird
tell how
year.
much we spent. So I can see how much we spent as of December 2019, but we weren't considered a separate entity. So when that money got returned to the general fund in 2020, they couldn't tell us what that number was because I asked. Denise did all that research, and then we can see how much we've spent thus far, and we could guesstimate what we'll do between now and June, and then we can see how much will be going back this year. But it's I do think, I'm very glad you brought up the point of the police. I think it's a really tough argument in the community to say we have such a tiny budget and you want to cut that, but you gave police officers a 2% raise, and you did it in a time when you knew the potentially hazardous situation the city would be in due to the tax base being shifted, and that was a conscious decision. And so you want us to contribute $2,500 seems probably not, it's going to seem logical to most citizens. So we'll see how that goes, but I have full confidence in Jude, and I think that we have crafted a very strong argument, and we will submit it and we'll see what happens. And we'll keep everyone posted. And also, Jude, you were going to make an ask of everyone tonight anyway.
Yeah, I was just gonna, before we move on, I did want to make an ask. There is still work that needs to be done on the budget, just in terms of the city isn't necessarily tracking our budget, and holding us to what we said each line item would be. We have flexibility within that, but it is still really good to have an idea so we don't overspend earlier in a year and leave ourselves short for later in the year, etc. So I would love to get from people thoughts and ideas for how the budget should potentially move around this year, or if there are specific trainings or projects or other things that are going to have more of a cost. One thing I already know is that we definitely need to shift around internally and have more money going to that outreach. There wasn't enough in there this year if this year had been a normal year. So I definitely know things that need to move around already, but I obviously only know what I know. So I'd love to hear from anybody else. If you can shoot me an email in the next, say, 2 weeks and let me know of things you're thinking about or know of, and then I can see what I can do to piece everything together.
And so if you guys think of things that you might want to do, particularly outreach folks, if there are things you want to do that you haven't been able to do and you anticipate being able to do them in late 2021, because the budget year starts in July. So let's hope, lots of people have vaccines by September. What kind of outreach would you do? Is there training that you would want to attend in person somewhere? We know that lots of trainings are going to be done virtually. So the International Association of Chiefs of Police, I think that's the link that Sarah sent us yesterday. Some trainings they do only for police, but other trainings they do for the whole community. And they've got some very interesting trainings this fall. I think everybody should think about NACOL training. And I think everybody should try to attend the conference at least once, because there is nothing like being in a room with 500 other people who are thinking about nothing but civilian oversight. And you really get steeped in the understanding of the principles and the techniques, and you learn all kinds of crazy things. I think Frances was in one talking about how to tell when the police show you body cam footage if they've clipped anything. So like, she's got some really high level skills. And we went to consent decree seminars, and we heard crazy, amazing attorneys general from all over the country. And so I think everybody should try to do that if it's in your ability to do that at least once. And I know most people weren't able to do that. So that's something I think we can all think about.
And one other reminder just with NACOL is, if you do want to get the certification through them, you have to have attended a conference. So that's something to bear in mind as well, if that's something you're working towards.
Yeah, and then do so many hours of seminars. So I think we went in 2019, and then I got certified this year because I kept doing more. And I know other people are on that pathway too. So, so there are lots of things we can do virtually and lots of things that we can do hopefully in person one day. But sometimes even the virtual things have a fee. And so understand that we have a training budget, and it's very important to use it because everybody needs a certain level of training so that, that the public has confidence in our competence. The 2020, any questions about that? About spending money, training, budget items?
I guess,
Councilmember Wally has his hand up.
just real quick, I just, making sure that there aren't any needs that this commission has thought about that need to be addressed, but we're afraid to ask because of the budget. Was there anything that we're keeping ourselves from doing because of the budget? I want to be aware that we're not constricted in the work that needs to be done because of the fear of that. Just want to make sure that there isn't that hanging over and choking off work.
I think one of the issues that we might have, which might cost us a little bit of money, is to retain a legal counsel or a counsel.
Yeah, that was in the ordinance, and that's
the ordinance. So if there's going to be any chunk of money, probably would be over there. I don't know when we are going to need that, but eventually we'll need that, whether it's towards the end of this fiscal year or next year or so.
And that would come as a budget amendment to council that would require 8 votes. So, in the unfortunate instance that has to happen, we're well aware of that. That tool that the commission has to come back and ask for, because outside counsel is expensive. I mean, you just initially anything's going to cost $25,000 minimum for any kind of outside counsel. So thanks for bringing that up.
Okay, it's 7:10 and we're coming to our last item on the agenda, which is the 2021 meeting schedule, which I know Denise sent everybody. I'll post it on Twitter and Facebook as well. And it just kind of lists all of our meetings and indicates that as of now, we still expect them to be on Zoom due to the virus. Our next meeting is February 23rd and then March 23rd. As always, the 4th Tuesday of the month. And it looks like, and so the schedule remains consistent. I wanted to point out that when we were originally seated, the plan was for us to meet every other month. And I remember a few people thought, oh, there's no way, we have so much work to do. We can't do that. We have to meet every month. And I know last year in January of this year, we had some interim meetings. I think we met a couple times in the middle. So we met at 2-week mark and then we kept going. And so we didn't have a meeting in the month of December, which I think was probably a well-deserved respite, but people did do training in that time period. So that was really useful. And so I just wanted to point out that this schedule has us down for 12 months. And so it looks like we are scheduled to be on once a month. However, it is absolutely reasonable if this commission feels like we should miss a meeting in August or something so people could breathe. We should talk about that. If we should decide to miss the December meeting, or something like that. So the schedule as it is us on the 4th Tuesday of the month, but this is something that this commission can decide. And so if we decide that we should miss a meeting, we should probably talk about that a few months in advance, but certainly that is something that should be dictated by us. And I think there is some great value in everybody taking some time to do some self-care. Some people are probably better at that than others. And so to take a month off in the summer or a month off in December at the end of the year is entirely reasonable. Councilmember Song.
You muted you, okay. Unmute, okay.
Thank you. This isn't in regards to the schedule. It was, and it's not on the agenda, so I'm not really quite sure where I can bring this up, but at 2 council meetings ago, there was a discussion with Chief Cox and staff on banning facial recognition software. And there's been some community interest taking a look at that, and Council Member Radina, and who's on the Human Rights Commission, liaison for that commission, and I were interested in seeing if there would be interest on this commission in doing a joint effort and taking a look at potentially introducing a ban. Because I know Dr. Jackson knows this well, the research on how the technology doesn't work well. We don't use it, Chief Cox. There was no consideration for using it, but as you know, as you've mentioned in this meeting a couple times now, that we don't know what the makeup of council will be in the future, of police, of this commission. And just because, you know, technology changes doesn't mean, well, we know that in its current use, it doesn't work well. It's used, it works, and it's used, you know, to target people of color. And I brought this up because I'd like to see Ann Arbor actually just kind of demonstrate how progressive it can be when in Massachusetts it has a statewide ban after there was a ban in 5 municipalities. So Chief Cox has resolution language. I'm just trying to figure out what the path would be for this commission and if there's interest in exploring this.
You guys probably know I'm on a tour, a speaking tour. So just about every week I give a talk somewhere and I talk about what oversight looks like in Ann Arbor. And this is one of the questions I get. And I was at a meeting with an awful lot of lawyers. And one of the things they suggested is that the ACLU has some of the best research on this and that they would be just happy to come and talk to council about this. And I know most people here are probably familiar with the facial recognition software issues, but largely artificial intelligence has trouble distinguishing between people of color. And so you're much more likely to match someone than you would. Part of it has to do with algorithms that didn't include African-American, Latino, Asian faces in their databases in the first place. But we've seen things in Detroit. You guys are probably aware, they've had a couple of really bad situations because facial recognition software, it's never intended to be used as, you know, a standalone rationale for arresting someone, but often people use it and work backwards from there. And so there were people who were arrested who, when you look at them and the perpetrator, look nothing alike. And those people's lives are turned upside down because of that experience. And so, you know, until AI and facial recognition gets a lot better, it just seems like it will disproportionately harm underrepresented people. And so this, I think, is the big...
and we know federally it's still being used, right? So we know it's used federally on the federal level with ICE.
And housing people have mentioned that they're very concerned about its use even in Ann Arbor for tracking people. And I know I've had those conversations with some of you individually about how it's used in different places and how it might be misused even unintentionally. Councilmember Rumlawi, you had your hand up, is it?
Yeah, I'm speaking a lot tonight, sorry. Just with the calendar, the notice that we got that usually is published for the public. I'm sure maybe Denise has already done it, so it can just be organized so it reads from January sequentially down to December. The copy that I got is just kind of jumbled up a little bit.
Are you looking at it in preview mode? Because I did the same thing, and then as soon as I opened it, it's actually arranged in 3 columns, and it looks fantastic.
Yeah, okay. I was going to say I had 3 columns. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, then I'm seeing it in a different layout. So then ignore.
And we'll post it on the website too. So the meeting dates are always on our website, but also I'll post this on Facebook and on Twitter in this form. But I guess I could share my screen. It looks fine.
Okay, and then just the one thing is just, as we just experienced in December, getting together in the holiday season is extremely difficult. I know we're going to make these calls as we go, but I'm just looking at that one as a really, you know, I'll make them, I'll make them, but it may be one that it'd be hard to get all of us corralled at that time, but. That's all.
After I get a vaccine, I am going somewhere warm and tropical, and I'll zoom in if you want me to, but.
I think everybody's leaving after the vaccine.
As soon as we get one, this commission is like virtual. We are out. You're like, you have a vaccine, you could meet in person. We're like, we have a vaccine. That means we can leave. We will all.
Just don't ask us. Don't ask the city to pay for it. And got it.
Won't. We won't. We won't. We don't bill you now for our considerable time, so we won't do that.
Thank you.
I think it is fine to bring up the facial recognition software. Commissioner Hoffman.
Yeah, I really would like to I know any of the data that these companies are generating are based on one type of group of people, and then they start spreading that across the board, across the board, and that by itself does not do justice. Even if there is some kind of benefit of using the software, if it were not inclusive and have enough data, statistically verified data, that this one software can or cannot distinguish between individuals, I think I would err on side of caution. I'd rather not recommend it, but also what we need is if we have information from ACLU or so, if they can provide us, invite them, have them just explain to us, whether it's as a seminar, webinar, whatever, tell us what's really happening. And if they have the data, I think we should follow the data. People who are in science sometimes always have data, and this data is coming from one particular group of people, and we think that it applies on all. One size does not fit all.
Well said. I didn't mean to, I wasn't dodging your question, Councilmember Song. I'm certainly happy to work with you on this. And if anybody else is, you can shoot an email. But I think it's probably, it shouldn't be a tough thing to do at this time. The police don't have the capability of using it. They don't use it. So we're not taking away any of their tools. And so it might be a good time to think about, banning it until and unless it becomes proficient at recognizing all faces equally. And I'm sure that'll be a few decades.
Is there a way that I could form a subcommittee then, or how are issues organized within the committee?
So we've done that before. We have a subset of people who work with the HRC, for example. They were working on trespass, and so we often form subcommittees that don't exist to study something new or to do something new, and so we could certainly do that.
Okay, because I have the Massachusetts ACLU's language. That's what the ordinances were based on. That the 5 cities in Massachusetts had passed their ban, and then that went up to the state, and now it's a statewide ban. And it was also in collaboration with the Electronic Frontier Foundation's work. So I had sent all these links to Dr. Jackson last month. So if there are other nerds, I guess, is what I'm policy nerds who would like to jump into this world with me, and then Travis will find folks in HRC. I'd really like to get a jump on this.
So why don't I send those links to everybody and copy you, and then anybody who's interested can reply back?
Yes, that'd be great. Thank you.
Wants to do what? I know lots of people are doing lots of stuff already, but but if you're interested in this as well, we have people working with HRC, working on the crew report also. So,
and I've already talked to Eli, Ellie Savitz and Senator Irwin about this too. So it won't be a difficult path. I hope it won't be. So there's interest, and there's already precedent. So we can just copy Massachusetts. All right, thank you so much. I'm sorry, back to calendar.
No, this is a great topic for our commission. This is part of thinking about how we prevent or perpetuate really good policing. And this stretches across policing, obviously, lots of different areas. So
thank you.
Certainly, we're happy to participate in this. Is there anything else that anybody wants to add there? We should always have a section here, and I didn't print the backside of this paper, but if there are general comments that people want to make, I understand the outreach committee did not have specific comments that they wanted to make this time, but if there is anyone else who has an issue that they'd like to raise, questions they'd like to ask, something of which we should be aware. Commissioner Hoffman.
Do we have to make a motion to accept our meeting schedule for this coming year or for this year, or it's just information?
I
Yes.
think you go, Denise.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, it would be wise if you voted on the calendar.
So do we want to, we can always make an exception to the calendar, so we can vote.
You can always change it at any time. This is
And we can
just so I
change
can
it anytime.
solidify
If
it.
you all know you don't want to meet in December, we can say that
Right.
right now.
I
Look,
was just
I
about
see some
to say,
heads.
I moved to amend to remove December's meeting.
Okay.
Is there a second?
Second.
Look, there's 5 seconds. All right, all in favor of removing December's date from the calendar?
I-
Any opposed?
Okay.
Is there anyone who's like, no, I must meet in December? No? Okay, so we can do that now, and
Okay,
then
unanimous vote.
that was unanimous, and then we can discuss in the future if you'd like, if we want like to take a month off in the summer.
Yes.
In June, July, August, or September, or some other month that might work for people if there is a need for a breather. We weren't here in December, but I feel like I worked just as much in December as if we had a meeting. So I know that doesn't mean because we're here, people are still doing work, so.
That's true. And I can just post that it's canceled. And so you can cancel meetings at your time, at your choice.
Okay, and we'll bring it up. I'll make sure that I put a note in there that maybe we can ponder it and we can discuss it again in February or March. If there's, if people have a strong feeling about a month in the summer that we could take off and work independently. Councilmember Rumlawi.
Yeah, thank you, and appreciate Commissioner Mohammed to remind us or remind the commission to make a motion to approve the calendar. I think the charter will require that. It's one of those technicalities that make it official and make cross our T's on that. But yeah, of course you've done it before. Obviously, you've called special meetings. This time last year, you had quite a few of them. We had the police chief issue, and there were reasons to convene on a very short notice. And then I just wanted to go back and since this is a kind of one of our shorter meetings, it seems like I always want to get our full 2 hours. Whether the police chief, since he's here, wanted to weigh in on the facial recognition at all. I know that he's discussed that with us, and we understand that. But since he's here and is a public body, maybe perhaps to have a clear understanding of where the policy is for the Ann Arbor Police Department when it comes to artificial intelligence and facial recognition for comfort for our residents and visitors. Chief, are you with us?
Yes.
How you doing, sir?
I am. I briefly spoke about this at City Council before. It's not a technology we currently use because it's just so unreliable. As a matter of fact, it's not even something we were thinking about using. When the technology actually improves and gets rid of all the bugs and all of those things, it would have a use for us, but it currently doesn't. And I don't really see when it will, as far as that's concerned. So it's really a non-starter for us just because it's unreliable. We're not thinking about using it. We don't use it. And we don't have any technology that has access to that.
Do we, while we work with other jurisdictions, other law agencies, are they using it? And then somehow with collaboration, with working with all these different enforcement agencies, are they using it and then bringing it into our community in ways that maybe the Ann Arbor Police Department doesn't, but some others do?
Yeah, so I can't speak for other agency. I would say the federal government, I think, is really the only agency that may have access to it pretty regularly. State and local towns, I can't really speak for them, but I would say that the federal government is pretty much the only law enforcement agency that uses that routinely, or at least has access to it. I can't even speak to how often they use it.
Thank you.
Commissioner Birch?
Thank you. And circling back to the schedule, wondering if in the spring we were planning on some sort of retreat to maybe strategically plan for the year ahead. Just curious, I'm assuming it's on the radar, just hadn't been made aware of like a date or anything yet.
It is, and we should think about a date. And so I'm glad you brought it up in this particular forum. We do need to do some strategic planning, and we do need to think of a time when we can all get together on a date outside of our regularly scheduled meeting where we can think about some short-term planning and some long-term planning and sort of flesh out some of the things that we need to work on going forward, and where we see this going, and thinking about public safety in Ann Arbor in general and how oversight plays a part in that. And so we probably need a good chunk of time. I think lots of people do that for, you know, a nice part of a day. I would imagine if we do it in the spring, we might still have to do it remotely. If we have a quorum, it would be subject to Open Meetings Act. But I think that we probably need to have a time devoted just to that, where we're all thinking about these things and turning them over and kind of wrestling with some of the directions that we want to go in and what we want to focus on. And we could think about that as thinking about, you know, fiscal year 21, 22, since that will start in the summer. So I am happy to send around a poll or something and ask people about potential dates. Is there one or two days of the week that might generally work with people, that with enough notice you could meet on a Saturday, with enough notice you could meet on a Friday? Is there a consistent day of the week that we should at least shoot for?
I'd say I'd vote for Friday, but that's just me.
Anybody else feel like that with enough notice they could get away on a Friday?
Yeah, now we're talking about an in-person, or are we still, what are we talking about?
I think we're gonna have to think about being on Zoom if we're in the spring, unless everyone's just gotten vaccines left and right. But I think we're talking about a nice chunk of time, maybe 6 hours or so.
Okay, Friday works for me, but I got my first vaccine last week. And as soon as I get my second one, I'm out of here. So, so anyway, if it's going to be Zoom, I have my computer, so it doesn't matter.
We will live vicariously through you.
Thank you.
So happy for you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Commissioner Othman?
And I would remind you, Commissioner Carter, that even if you have the 2 doses of the vaccine, still you have to have the mask.
I don't need that reminder. I'm suffering under 2 pre-existing conditions. I'm old and Black, so I will always have my mask on.
Just a reminder from an epidemiologist.
I appreciate it, but I got it.
We're always happy to have a resident epidemiologist. We're always. It's also good to be aware of one's pre-existing conditions.
That's right.
But I think Zoom would probably work for us, because I think because some of us may be in Tahiti, clearly. But I will send an email to everybody. Actually, I'll do a doodle poll. Go, Jude.
I was just probably way too detailed of a question, but having designed some of these, if we have to do Open Meetings Act, that means that if we're by Zoom, there's no breakouts. We all have to be in the same place at the same time, right? Or actually, no. If we break up and we're in groups of less than 5, we can do small group walk still, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Right. And so you could do 4 breakout rooms to do some brainstorming or something, or 3 breakout rooms of, 4 people, or to do some brainstorming or something like that, and then come back together as a big group. And that's totally legal.
Yes.
Too bad we aren't in person. We could do a high ropes course together as some team bonding.
Yeah.
Suddenly I'm grateful for social distancing.
That's what all of us really want to do. Ropes course. Let's zip line. Let's meet in Hawaii? No? Okay. In any case, so I will do that. I will send that out to everybody tomorrow, and I'll just try to look for something maybe in April where we might be able to and offer some potential dates and see if people could come together. We'll also look for a facilitator perhaps to do part of it. I think part of the work is just work that we need to do together. But it might be useful to have somebody sort of, facilitating the beginning and the end of it. And then also I'll ask you guys if there are specific things you'd like to work on in it so that we have an idea of how to, direct ourselves. So we're not just hanging out for 6 hours and doing nothing, which would be fun, but not very efficient. So.
Councilmember Ramwali has his hand up.
Thank you. As someone who's regularly in 6-hour meetings, I would just perhaps recommend breaking it up and maybe into two meetings, like 3 hours. Perhaps not everybody comes to both of them. The leadership gets stuck perhaps with attending both. I know it's a big commitment, more time taken out of your daily lives, but perhaps maybe having two meetings so that you're not all burned out.
It depends on whether it's in person or online, or so. If we're doing something fun, we might be able to hack it all in one shot, but that's definitely an option. I've done some that were pretty entertaining for a long period of time, but you didn't just sit there and talk for 6 hours. So you were up and about. Go, Anand. Commissioner Amiri.
I think to break it down to 3 hours each time, if we do it on Zoom, because it's very hard to sit and stare at a computer for 6 hours and stay focused. For me, I find it, much harder to stay focused and follow up when the meeting is long on Zoom, while it's in person. I don't have the same problem. So just a thought, like maybe we break it down either the same day, we have an hour in between break or lunch break, long one, or in two days in a row or something.
I think we have lots of options.
Yeah.
Commissioner Othman.
Yeah, I just would remind that if we are going to propose any kind of changes to the ordinance, we have to have that before in the first 2 years of our commission. So if we are going to be brainstorming anytime in the spring or so, probably a session would be devoted to looking at the ordinance and come up with suggestions of some of the changes that we would like to incorporate and submit that to the city council.
Thank you for that. I think that's on the minds of many of us. Anything else? Should I show this this video of Makaya? It's about 4 minutes long.
Yes.
You guys
Well, I wanted to ask, could we motion to vote on the schedule?
Motion to vote on the schedule. Is there such a motion to accept the schedule from January 26th to November 23rd, 2021?
Yes.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor of accepting that 11-month meeting schedule, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
And we have no more official business. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Are we not going to see the video?
Oh, I guess I could show it as part of official business, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, one moment then. Let me share my screen with you.
Can I record it or no? You can send it to me.
I can send the link to you, but I want to make sure you guys can hear it first.
Yes.
Can you see it?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, let's see if you can hear it.
Both my first time voting. This is not what I imagined for my first time voting. I actually voted yesterday. Like I got my little sticker and everything.
Working in a swing state is probably one of the most intense things you could go through. Really see young people and Gen Z in specific rising up to the occasion.
I feel like even though we're minorities, our voices are very strong. And with the needle being pointed in either direction, it's like, you know, one thing can just tip it completely in the opposite direction.
On college campuses, the turning leaves mean another election season. And this year, a lot of Gen Z voters are full of hope that the voices of Black, Indigenous, and people of color could make all the difference. Young BIPOC activists Jacob, Maya, and Micaiah are working in swing states like Arizona, Wisconsin, and Michigan to get voters to the polls.
Every single other day, we're phone banking and reaching out to voters and just trying to find them where they are.
In Arizona, Jacob Martinez got interested in politics at an early age.
So I used to be involved with the Republican Party. I was the chairman of the Teenage Republicans. I started to have a lot of animosity and distaste for the party really around the time that Trump kind of took office, and the rhetoric about immigrants really didn't sit right with me. And then following the shooting in Parkland, we saw 17 people die, students just like me, and the Republican Party didn't want to do anything about it.
Now he's working the phones for the progressive group NextGen and plans to vote for Joe Biden.
We are making it our top priority to not only reach out to young voters across the state, specifically, people of color, to make sure that voices that have otherwise really been not heard and ignored in the past in elections and by legislators, that we're reaching out to them and they know that they do have a voice.
In battleground Wisconsin, Maya Colon also grew up conservative and says she approves of the job the president has done.
My father has been a police officer for the last 25 years. It's really nice to see Trump's support for them. I've been making phone calls, contacting people about, who they're planning on voting for and making sure that they have the absentee ballots if they need.
And in Detroit, Michigan, Micaiah Shipp worked with U.S. Representative Rashida Tlaib during the summer to recruit young voters.
Made a TikTok style video to teach the youth how to vote and what that process is looking like for their primaries. And I was extremely excited about that because I knew that, especially in the city of Detroit, not everybody had parents that were voters, active voters, and that knew what that process was like. And so if they couldn't teach their students or their kids, then who would?
Step number 3, fill out that ballot and return it. Check if you're registered right here.
According to a Pew report, 2/3 of Zoomers think that Black people are treated less fairly than white people in the U.S., and about half of the people who said they attended a protest focused on race or racial equality this summer were under the age of 30.
No peace! No justice! No peace!
In 2016, just under 50% of eligible voters actually voted in the presidential election, and that participation dropped down to 36% for the 2018 midterms. So will 2020 be different? Micaiah says she's voting for Biden, but she's still frustrated by the lack of representation.
It's definitely been the lesser of two evils. I feel like Biden does have good policy in some areas, but also, I don't necessarily feel like he represents me as a Black woman in America. He just does not. When you have consistent, older white men running for president, it kind of drains you and makes you not even passionate about elections in general.
Overall, polls also show Gen Z voters see both President Trump and Joe Biden more negatively than positively, but usually tend to support Biden over Trump. But for Maya, it's not just about diversity of race, it's also about diversity of opinion. And being a Latinx Gen Z voter doesn't necessarily mean she fits a predictable profile.
I personally don't support the Black Lives Matter movement. I do, of course, support Black lives. I support all diverse, people. I feel like being a BIPOC voter, there's a certain sort of alignment that you should have, certain values that you should have. But at the same time, I'm an American. And so the values that Trump shows, being pro-Constitution and wanting to, continue the legacy that our forefathers have created for us, it's like, yeah, that's something I really enjoy. It really resonates with my values.
And with their diverse outlooks and backgrounds, Maya, Jacob, and Micaiah are hoping that getting involved will mean more representation across the board.
What I'm more optimistic about is giving the resources to not only one standard of people, but for everyone. Having more Black and brown representation in everything, whether that be policy, legislation, or just on our TV screens and media. I hope that things can really come full circle and that the things that we have been fighting for can actually start to be seen and not just something that we continue to speak about.
Nice.
Wow.
Thank you.
Impressive.
Good job.
Oh, I'm sorry. I may need to make it stop. That would be helpful.
We are so lucky to have you.
Thank you. I haven't watched that video since it came out, so it's like super weird seeing myself talk again. But thank you.
You did not know we were going to play that today. Full disclosure. I was just like, everyone should see this.
I'm glad we did.
Yes, I'm glad you did. I'm so glad everybody could hear it as well. So if there is nothing else we need to cover, is there now a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you all.